in the lobby of the shrine by Julio Medina man in the city, has become idolatrous golden calf, I mean, the money, which is making the same man through the money all ranks, and justifies and in short, becomes the highest aspiration in modern civilization. Both man referring to man refers equal to his wife and vice versa, who lost his youth acquiring knowledge through academic study as nothing has studied, reach that same aspiration, money so much for, that much has nothing for which money is the square the place for all ills, that's all agree those who know, and those who know nothing. The haves and the have-nots. When the great initiate Moses rose amid thunder rays, lightning and storms to Mount Sinai to conquer the tablets of the law, was not afraid in the midst of which struggled to acquire the 10 commandments of God's law, which are the laws of nature code. All his immense sacrifice crashed when, it down from the mountain, he found God's people worshipping the golden calf, that same money today totally drunk to the human species, and full of pain and deep indignation broke the tablets of the law, i.e., the knowledge gained with so much sacrifice, by could not reach the hands of man, because man was longing or worshipping the things of his own making. Today has peaked this idolatry, and man will have to learn from experience what will be the result of being broken against their customs and idolatry of false idols. The laws of nature coded all material, has progressed in the moral field. Man has done a great artist, and the spiritual realm remembers him as a possible promise. The word mystery has served as a wonderful sign to classify what the unprepared man does not understand. The man himself has not progressed. It has become rather useless, if civilized man is stripped of element, that it would be mighty sorry for her appearance. It seems that comfort is your happiness and eagerly seeks and gets, but after you get the thwarts capriciously, and this makes up in the same field of his inner feelings. So we see that eager looking for a love, get it forms a loving home and respected careful, and through many time, builds up the heat in your home, and when you least expect it handles disrupt it, as if in pain for the work it has done, and if it makes your own work, your own pain, what will not be able to do with the pain of others? There has been powerful for evil, and try to justify it using history to confirm that this has been the man at all times, and that history repeats itself. Wonderful way to justify the evil, and so continues to prepare to destroy. However, the man sincerely believes he is looking good and perfection. Can that his intentions are true, but goes the other way in the pursuit of perfection, because he has put more attention to the things of their own making, that which makes the eternal living God. Education in general clearly, even when the materials assist with pious sentiments and religious flavor, because education today fails to transform the being, trained, but still with all his vices and grudges, the bad and the wicked be no longer. Because they have much instruction, for education to be achieved grown, that is, transform their bad qualities in good, it is essential to get to know the laws of nature and man's position in front of them. The culture that is currently available to people only serves to make them fit for consumption. Element propose the golden calf. Material progress is closely related to the economic problems. Material progress leads to greater comfort, convenience, and requires greater investment of money for everyday life. On the one hand, everybody wants and demands convenience, complete ease for all, and secondly, the same man complains about the cost of living. You cannot invite the pleasure without attending his twin brother, pain. And on the other hand, the fact is that as a family is notoriously amenities to praise when you get home, well as the children of a city are strongly praised economically when the city gives them greater comfort and facilities, that is, immediately increases the cost of living. A paving city streets has to know, or leave the cost of the paving of the money from all those who live in those who visit it temporarily, immediately, because recovery which receives the building or any building requires increased lease, and this involves increasing the goods that are purchased in the building. Comfort is what has made the cowardly man so afraid of life, death, the morning, they will say. The brave man evades the comfort that is not afraid. From now on humanity will receive a lot of pain, and we must receive it with resignation, because it is the middle of that Mother Nature uses to make her children back to her. The pain will become the anvil flourish, or hardens the new humanity. The races that have come to enjoy greater comfort have never been the most durable. As human abbreviations, those disappear, and they are only traces of its grandeur and opulence. The only thing that can break the golden calf is pain, because the pain was the path Christ showed us to redeem us. Here among us lowly Indians of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta live without money and were able to save the civilizing indoctrination through us because both the number and the natural defense that has not allowed it protects his sparse population flattered to producers and manufacturers to obtain as centers of consumption and the inaccessible terrain prevents civilized curious come to their traditional customs these Indians do not have money or our culture, and yet live happily ever they work the land, and change their products to each other, and thus solve their needs. The only tribes who already have problems are those who remained in the lower reach of civilized Indians in the highlands of the Sierra do not understand the issues, they do not know anything are the problems. Sheep, jittle and cotton wool give the referee and yarns for clothing and supplies indispensable, and women at leisure they make their clothes and essential items the man their economic problems created, when it separated from its mother nature and man separated from his mother nature, when urban life was created, and in urban life man formed an artificial life, and the artificial life of urban life is full of problems the man who created it at. The same man happens to chick hen spreads, if the chick has cool looking to her mother, that she cherishes him with their wings the mercy of its heat. If you are hungry, seeking to feed the hen she gets land escarbandoles feed no political party or the best organized government can do for the chick making her mother hen. Alone is able to solve this hard and serious land problem escarbandoles only the mother knows hunger take there. Children no political leader for intelligent and however great their political doctrine can never do what he can to make the mother for her child by the fruit of his love. It is only the mother knows and understands the intimate needs of your child only the mother can keep him warm with the heat and feed it to her chest, because she is nature in miniature the man walked away from his mother, nature, when it was isolated in urban life then the man known in hunger and nakedness problems arose and morally corrupt, because he was orphaned. If the man wants to solve its economic problems, has to return to the bosom of his mother, nature, she always waits for her children of her womb, as a hen gathers her chicks. She gives man wool and linen to be seen, the fire to harbors, and timber of its forests to build his house, his refuge so, while man go to urban life, to solve their problems will be doing the opposite, to redeem them the man who is hungry, Semidus Nundes, go to urban life, to solve their needs resembles going to look for food in the middle of the desert since the food is sought which can be produced in the fields, in forests. Not in the city, because the city is not agriculture occurs there may be those producing only money, and money makes men referring also refers to women, and vice versa, or not physically Kanoskan is true and reliable partner, which beasts, devour each other for man solve your problems, you need to turn away from urban life and a golden calf, the idols of their idolatry, selfish and borders, because the borders are daughters of the selfishness of man. Since the world was given to us without borders and return to the fields to work, produce life in order to gain the daily bread by the sweat of his brow and reverent bow your head, before depositing the seed in the ground, to multiply their food and their children, that day man will have no more problems, because his mother nature will take your hunger, cold and nakedness and dissolve political parties because political leaders cannot exist without mass that follow, and there will be happiness neither communism nor fascism or Nazism, or labor, nor socialism can give the man his mother's breast, because only the mother can breastfeed their children, and take away the hunger and cold there is no reason to starve the people, for the earth gives abundant fruit, to feed all the beings, that dwell therein the animals are starving, is because man has locked in land and places where there are food. The same applies to men who are enclosed within urban life. The world economic solution is not to give more money to the world, because it already has enough problems. What every man needs to live is a house and a piece of land to grow food, and provide our mother nature else to do this. You do not need to invent more political parties. The parties are invalid as crutches for humanity. We turn to nature always putting an example for all teaching, because she is an open book, teaching and provides us with vivid examples, with acts committed, which gives us experience, and the best teaching experience. One thing is known when done, if it is not running, is for us a theory. Therefore we try to incorporate social customs, teachings that Mother Nature gives us, trying to discern people, to find what is most convenient. And therefore are examples like these rural women raising her son. She feeds him with his chest, because she sends her love more interest food, and this is what gives each time your child demands, and affection tells you when you want, and when you do not want, irrespective hour, minute or second, because it has no clock nor knows, nor needs, in contrast to the mother city manners, not the martyrs crying for his son. Seems to have a heart of stone and literally waiting for hours elapsed tormenting, indicating all texts parenting to provide food filled. The mother sleeps with her indispensably son, she defends him with her warmth, and intuitively makes feeding your child to continue with the colors of your aura, I mean radiative, forcing that aura way out of the human body, and especially the mother, who is all love and tenderness for her son. This vital force is essential for a close and intimate external and internal connection between mother and son is restored. Instead, the lady of the city, from the moment your child is born, you are required to put you on camera apart, also not receive the warmth of his mother, not mortify, doing this the opposite of what the mother nature, when allowing the fetus not only feed on the blood of his mother, but to live in the midst of his warmth and lap. All this leads to there being more understanding and greater unity between mother and son, between rural people and the village, among the nations of civilized customs fine, and makes her mother and her home, that the child grows up with so many codes, rules and anti-most systems. The first root, natural, which the denatured. The historical materialism as official science theory cannot be the basis for social life, because he knows the history of materialism, do not know, or can know, because they lack the same subject and intimate vital functions that have determined the theory of matter and materialism of history. The constitution of matter is subject to the laws of time and space, and time give, but always the same, and the environments have never been the same. The physical, chemical composition of matter has not been the same in all times, and the organic biology of some million years ago not equal to the current. That strange theories of historical materialism on which man had to get away from the nature and form favored cities for the ravages of nature is as absurd as trying to remove a fish from water to favor him from the element of water. Each agency is biologically adapted to the environment in which they move, so by historical materialism as a basis for a well-organized society is completely inadequate, because it ignores the very history of the matter, which has not always been the same in his physical, mental, biological constitution. Somatic. The materialist knows nothing about the life fund, or the Tachas vital fund. The Tachas are the inner substance of the matter. Physicists allowed the ether to explain the laws of gravitation, cohesion, vibration, and pulsation, but to tell us nothing about the constitution of the ether. If the physical wants to make efficient progress, has to resort to the occult and the study on Tachas, which are the various modifications of the ether, fundamental cause of the tensions and strains of heat, the movement that produces heat and sound, produce heat and sound, light, color, light, it produced. Note therefore, light, color, and movement, they are one with different vibrations and develop, evolve, and progress on the ether and its amendments calls Tachas in Eastern language. This book contains a series of invaluable knowledge, but it is regrettable that no light can reach the most, because they are more committed to just enjoy, and those who have studied and formed judgment are happy with their beliefs and prejudices, and are unfriendly to make revisions. All this makes man does not seek happiness within himself, but outside. If believes that the money and get everything accomplished, the more money can only give pleasure, but not happiness. The pleasure's tired and worn, while happiness is our intimate inner contentment and boast not enter the money. Happiness translates into leaves, returns, and never tires. Dear reader, when you feel the urge to consider ourselves lovers of the late singers and misery, remember that what we are trying is to make you understand nature is an open book, and that book is not learned with pretensions nor contempt. Please note that the alchemy of nature is much more powerful than the chemical used by the man. Please note that the stem of a flower, by the grace of alchemy, transforms the fetid mud of the flower fragrance, the dirt swamp out the magnificent flower revolutus, which the rottenness out of a fruit seed stalk that gives us food, that of pastures and waste that feeds the cattle out milk and meat which feeds mankind, that and remind you before compassion inspire pity, rather than his own body exhaling pestilence. Because it has no decency, and if you know not the practice, which is still poor, or no gesture internally, because I cannot do what the stem of a flower, all the money used in comfort, luxury, and comfort, economy worsens automatically associates. Instead, the money is used to provide access to abbreviations, these products giving the land, through roads, highways, railways, and the various routes of transport, reduce the cost of living, because these measures help to reduce the cost of food transporting. That gives the London that occur in regions where there is access at the same time puts the city in contact with producers, avoiding the complicated mechanism of intermediaries, since the lands relatives to large centers of consumption, for their high costs are held by people who do not work the land, that man has not denying significantly improved the species serves and feeds. Much attention has, because the farmer knows that the selection of the seed gets the best grain, same the poultry farmer, agronomist, livestock, and finally those who do produce the earth and its species. The same governments effectively contributed to this beautiful reality. All they have not attracted the attention of man is his own production today. After so many advances in studies to improve breeds of animals and the fruits and seeds of the earth, nothing is done to improve the urban production. Man must be taught to improve their production. To enter this area you must take the knowledge of the man, which makes not only the mind and the physical body, but the soul and spirit. The contemporary science has taught the wrong man. The 6. The union of man and the woman is a biological fact, like addressed by the woman's body by the same as a woman, implying by this, that is a biological function, that is only reaching orgasm. Inadvertently scientists that hormone incretion of the gonads is also biological function, and that sexual magic is a hormonal process incretion stepped from the purely biological. So we do not violate the biological law. We are masters of biological law. Material science completely forgotten the biblical precept that man, his 6th commandment says, not fornicate, not having sex with a partner other than the husband or wife, trustworthy, lust, or use sexual relationship with the couple, abused for complacency. There does not say who is authorized fornication, but dryly not to fornicate. That is, man must not use their seed, but only and exclusively to create, that is, to leave offspring, despite the approval that different beliefs and societies give to unions that do not comply with the law of God. Cannot remember the man whose seed is subject to the same rules to reproduce that other living beings with reluctance. We see the man who plunged into the worst ignorance uses his seed without selecting, through qualities and internal conditions, putting your body in the best conditions, and above all, know that will fulfill the most holy act, in which he is a creator God. And in the worst conditions and the lowest passions is presented to the woman, without respect and without love, to do the opposite of what orders the 6th commandment of God's law, not to fornicate. State what? Exalt ecstasy, passions, or lust, their lower feelings. And finally, like going to the market, given their pay, in order to seal the shameful act as a true idol of the golden calf. No wonder these children of the passion they call their own mothers, when referring to the new being, is gestated. Carelessness indicating that in this union, had never intended to create. The Bible in the Apocalypse calls mankind the great whore. What can make this union which gives life in contravention of a law of nature? What can you expect mankind of its urban production? What will become the moral quality of this new seed-bearing potential germ of the same reasons that called it into existence? What teacher can change the very foundations that led to this new being? The education. There must be a total transformation of the being, and transform when you have to know to be the external education may do. So act for a living and train in the intellectual field, coexist in society, but in the field of culture and decency, or care culture, or want decency. This evil seed that unconsciously to their progenitors became a new living being, coming later to cause fear to the society from which it came here. Virtually the society becomes victim of his own invention, then horrified, and without giving the cause of evil comes to the worst punishment for correction and invent laws, prisons, daggers, panoptic, forced labor, corporal punishment, and even death, in order to try to regenerate or remove evil. But bad not only remains, but in spite of existing laws and punishments continues to move in a landslide. Panoptic prisons and are dens of corruption. There have accommodated the worst indecency in sexual problem becomes repulsive characters, perverse souls, kindred souls in intimate coexistence easily corrupt one another, and so instead of removing the evil that is achieved, is to increase in these conditions panoptic prisons, and to regenerate the offender must be a resounding failure, because prison is a place of vice. Bullying the offender will increase the hatred of the society from which it came. Then that is not the way to regenerate, because it does not achieve the intended purpose, which is to turn those criminals into useful individuals to society. Reform is returning to form, and whether to fight evil with violence, shameful punishment with fetters and chains, it comes to increasing bad when evil is not evil, because it opposes increases. To combat evil with good as its opposite, such as the heat of cold, harder than soft, light from darkness. Extirpate evil as opposed to its opposite, good. If offenders to cause harm, to regenerate, society must find a way or form that will do good to society, that is the opposite of evil, and this is possible by making the punishment becomes useful things for society, and to thereby expose the following. First, founding farms with enough land for farming and food crops that give life. There intervene agriculture, poultry farming, beekeeping, and all that is creation of life. When man makes the land productive, stirred within the divine plan of God, who is love in the heart of mankind. For our government this is no problem, because it has immense wasteland. The money spent for prisons should employ in agricultural colonies, where each prisoner has his piece of land according to its merits, and then have it out of the colonies, when he has completed his sentence, and lives with his wife, isolating and of urban life, and sparing you return to the mud which comes second. Every man who has an art or a profession, that pays his condemnation. Working in farms in what is an expert. Third, keep psychologists who study the aptitudes of prisoners, and then be taught crafts and arts according to their skills. The education must be accompanied by good welfare, regenerating movies, books, and construction, etc. With these measures, is achieved cheap in life, and instead of maintaining the status lazy, and forming business experts, achieve super agricultural production, and therefore life for Bagaramento. Thus instead of being a hindrance, prisoners become necessary, consumer pass producers, heavy burden on society, become a relief for the people. There are two distinct classes of production and available to all understanding, what man needs to live, and what you need for your comfort. You need to live what God created and cultivated man. What you need for your comfort elaborates man with God, creates products. The first is essential for life and consumption, equal to men. Men referring also refers to women, and vice versa. All not physically. Kanoskan is true and reliable partner. The other is not paramount, and consumption divides it into many classes, depending on the use and consumption of what works man. We could say that man engages in cultivating the things that God created, i.e. they serve to give life, and the man who works, which are used to comfort. 8. You are called the peasants, laborers, settlers, etc. And the other, workers, artisans, professionals, etc. Farmers in the amounts they produce are acquiring the names of farmers, ranchers, farmers, etc. The workers and artisans in the amounts they produce become manufacturers, industrial tycoons, bureaucrats, etc. Among the element man builds for your comfort, including those that are used for defense and those who serve to keep his vices and pleasures. The faithful man is idolatrous golden calf, scorns the things that make God, and strives why the prepared. This has allowed the farmer, who is in charge of giving the man the element that serve to give life, has been delegated, nor has it in mind. If you are reminded, it is compassionately in the social ladder does not take place, just by the fact of not having fine customs that come to be, in short, the result which our current culture aspires. Instead, the element that work for your comfort, to their vices and pleasures, and even death, form the social elite amid applause and smiles. But one thing is the justice of man, and another thing is the righteousness of God. The man who creates life gives courage, patience, gentleness, humility, resignation, sincerity, faith, love, charity, justice, which are gifts and graces. All this translates into intimate complacency, in full satisfaction. By contrast, the other become powerful, but one thing to be strong and the other is to be virtuous. This one is worth before men. Men referring also refers to women. The other, it is to God. All these reflections we doing to our readers, to learn to discern, and discernment leads them to differentiate between the real and the illusory. Among the divine law and social law, it is a fact that we are today witnessing the final catastrophe of modern civilization. False, this order of things is running through great social upheavals, and man is powerless to dispel evil. For man not discerned, that is, it is falling blindly into the abyss of despair. No need to be a philosopher to understand the current catastrophe of modern civilization falls the city life increasingly unbearable and the cost of living is worse. Political leaders offer panaceas, but to take over their political parties, affiliates are disappointed because the promises remain what they really are. Humanity wants to put a gulf between the human and the divine, and the error of man there is precisely because within the same man is divine, the intimate. You want to be updated through the bustle of daily life, but for man looking loopholes, the man with all his beliefs he does is get away from himself. The man who joins materialistic or spiritualist schools, loopholes searching, only wants to avoid conflict, make the body feel, and laziness I know itself to resolve their own conflicts. Schools, beliefs, philosophies, etc. They are fictitious forms of comfort. The truth is not to be materialist or be a spiritualist, but being realistic, or is carried out thoroughly, addressed himself. Prosecute his personality without, but proud of virtue, because everyone feels virtuous, without hypocrisy, without false poses, pietismus feigned, setting our own personality in the dock, to judge, consider any severely, then draw a severe moral and ethical discipline, thus ending the most intimate roots of our own conflicts. Conflicts are children of our own ignorance. These individual conflicts are added to give social conflicts. Today more than ever it is necessary that the man begins to think on their own. People do not want to use discretion, but that fit the outside, and think like their leaders say. The problem of mass is the problem of the individual, and as he learns to solve their own problems, the whole mass of humanity will be full of uncertainties, sufferings, and calamities which vainly try to solve political leaders, because they themselves are full of problems and first have to learn to solve their own problems, and then try to solve others. Today the disillusioned mass aspires to catastrophe, because it is martyred, and so seeks out quickly desperation, and therefore daily hear sentences like this before being dangling, is better to fall. This gives a clear idea of the despair of the masses and the magnitude of the catastrophe. The mind of man must free itself from the shackles of desire, fear, cravings, the soft life, craving accumulation, selfishness, because this coerces mind, and incapable of discerning between the real and the illusory, what is remarkable and permanent, useful and useless, and among the most useful and least useful. The present mind of man is a boat going from port to port, and each port is a school, or theory, a belief, a sect, a party, a concept of flag, a philosophy, a religion, and when the mind is anchored in those mental funds, then shuts within those molds for driving, and constantly react with their preconceptions established there, a mind is unable to understand life free in its movement. A mind is a slave of animal self, stagnate, and energy obstructive of life. Where there are conflicts, class struggles, where hunger and pain there, man's mind need not liberate the silence of the antitheses which divide, and disabling as an instrument of intimate the reasoning person man through mental choice, make the mistake of dividing himself, and it is the wrong action and the wasted effort. Where the conflict arises, and bitterness. If we solve our own individual problems, we must learn the use and management of the mind. Thought must flow integrally without the process of choice, opinion, which divides the mind in such opposite opinions. Serene mind must flow integrally with the sweet flow of thought, and earn solely on intuition. Voice is intimate, the flower of intelligence. Of them is the right action, right effort, and the perfect fulfillment. The flame reminiscent of the new era is the light of thought. Man does not live the present, but in the middle of past experiences and concerns of tomorrow go through this colorful past experiences. Therefore, he sees this disfigured, therefore does not see the reality of this, and yet it is so called practical man. The new world will not be a world military conquest or boundary lines, but a new state of consciousness already born outside all limitations. Red and blue flags are full of ancestral prejudices. All this belongs to the past, to what has already paid off, as soon echo with chimes Easter Aquarium. When understanding flare lights the face of the earth, all the world's problems but will disappear, and there will be happiness. Love is the basis of life, and it is convenient to speak of love in the light of occult science. The people need a deeper understanding of the intimate experience of love. The people have so far not received a light on these deeper problems of consciousness. Millions of philosophers have tried to explain what cannot be explained. Every time we hear of love, in the halls, in the streets, in the clubs, People make various comments on the various issues of love, but no one has ever understood the mysterious force that slumbers in the depths of every human heart. Philosophers, through his mental musings, want to adjust the fixed and cold love rules, as if love were cold, or was subject to rules with deep pain. We see that people confuse passion with morbid love, to the extent that humanity no longer knows when and where carnal passion is love. Love to the current date is a mystery to mankind. Only science can discern this hidden veil, that religious something we've never understood, but we've always felt in the depths of the heart as a devouring thirst, as a divine contemplation, and to feel that divinity reached by the shape, form of matter, and when the bridegroom loves and contemplates his girlfriend, this feeling loved and absorbed does not change that moment for all the gold in the world, because pure love and lived back to the exhalation, and there amid a sublime ecstasy, feels the delights of love, is not always others belonging to ecstasy, and, spontaneous as you speak, one is born. It is closer to the truth of love, that is artificially formed when logical concepts on something that does not support the concepts. Many are disillusioned, love the end of a love tragedy as a catastrophe, but it's the people confuse what is an experience of the soul, which is a carnal passion. Love can never bring disappointment when what you feel is love during a trance of love, and when you feel love in full contemplation, they are not interested in explaining what is love, and it is what it feels like to sit and no one can feel. Theories marriage through Gnosis requires affinity of thought, affinity of feelings, union of wills, related experiences of consciousness, which internally feel the same and identical aspirations. The man, there are 7 states of consciousness which must vibrate in unison with the 7 states of consciousness of the spouse. Marriage must be verified in the physical, in the vital, in the astral, in the sentimental, as evolutionary, cognitive and mysticism. Each of these 7 states of consciousness relates to each of the 7 bodies of man. It is true that many have missed the Myforado that speak of the 7 agencies that man has, but if the reader loses interest and read carefully, understand what we try to explain on the same basis of love. The 7 bodies of man are: first, physical; second, body, vital; third, astral, living; mental; fifth, of will; sixth, of consciousness; and seventh, spiritual. The 7 bodies are fully material, because it is a fact that nothing can exist, not even God, without the help of matter. Each of these bodies have their anatomy, biology, physiology. Therefore, the occult cure doctor quickly, because he knows the anatomy of the 7 bodies of man. A perfect marriage is made on the basis that all the 7 bodies of man sexual colorio verify all the 7 bodies of women. Some are married to the physical body, but in the world of desire are not emotional and sentimental. Married incompatibility. In this case, the marriage is a failure for couples who are wedded in the physical world as given, and even in the emotional world, but their bodies do not make mental sexual colorio. These couples have thoughts, plans, projects, defines each other, i.e., they do not share in the world of the mind. In these cases, the marriage is not perfect. There are certain spouses who physically, emotionally, and mentally vibrate in affinity, but when it comes to making a decision in daily life, then their wills clash and conflict arises. These marriages are not perfect. Their vibrating consciousness defines, although other aspects such couples are related. In such cases, the marriage is not perfect, because perfect marriage needed to man the 7 agencies verify the colorio. The essence sex with the 7 bodies of women, often a man and a woman who are just friends in the physical world, and which comprise a mutually mentally happening in the world of the universal mind. These souls are husband and wife, but in the physical world these are espoused with other spouses. This will give the reader a clear idea of what the man hidden knowledge that each day more unknown man. When marriage takes place only in the physical world, there is only the reproductive relationship. The only thing that unites them is the sexual relationship. When the marriage be achieved in the physical and vital addition to the above, affinity of tastes and thoughts. When the marriage manages to be in the physical, vital and astral, more than the above, there is affinity of emotions. When the marriage is achieved in the physical, vital, astral and mental, in addition to the above, there is affinity of thoughts and feelings. If a marriage includes physical, vital, astral, mental and desire more than the above affinity, there will, of resolutions, decisions, aspirations, etc. If the marriage is achieved in the physical, vital, astral, mental, will and consciousness, more than the above are achieved, affinity of consciousness, love, ideas, aspirations, ideals, etc. Finally, intimate marriage, which can only be married who belong to the same gaio, and this becomes the perfect marriage. Marriage Gnostic. There are two kinds of marriage ties, karmic, which begins in the physical plane up, and the cosmic, held up and down, or that of a partner who receives a mission to fulfill in the higher planes, and then they will find a different levels, and they are also verifying the various marriages to be in the physical plane, leading to great love, to which not fix neither death, because they live in love and love makes them immortal, them being a perfect marriage. A large majority of beings are encountered through the ages, and are still husband and wife in different returns, and in different places of the earth, producing this high affinity and mutual understanding. All this suggests to us how serious it is the man or woman for themselves verify the marriage or purely social convenience, which results in a series of tormenting conditions they endure. The new lie what's marriage is for many a heavy burden. Tremendous. Unfortunately his darkened mind. Today women not looking for a man to marry as is natural, but looking for a party. This smacks of bank business. This game implies that the individual is owned by a wealthy or well-paid position, or has outstanding social position, or has won a degree that allows him to live comfortably. All of this is an insult to the majesty of love. All this can only bring pain and disappointment. The young man always has a pure and honest woman with whom to form a home, and which can dignify their lives and secure a patriarchal old age amid a home filled with love and tenderness, with a wife and children to ensure their old age. But it happens that the young, instructed by the devastating evil and shameful example of their elders, También is a friend of change and women, and with other lost his youth and virility, reaching old age homeless. No woman who would reach without a glass of water on his bed of illness. Then search and do not find, ask and do not give, that's your punishment. They take the wicked their own iniquities, and held the cords of his sin. Proverbs of Solomon, chapter, verse. Really, so ends the age of concupiscent. Humanity is sex slave. The Gnostic is their king, for the Gnostic knows honor the sex, and knows that lies at the root of their existence and their own seed. His seed is to procreate, to vivify and redemption. Humanity ashamed of sex, but what humanity should be ashamed of their corruption is no sex, because sex is not guilty of misuse that mankind has made of him. The teachings of this book take the reader to the very root of our being, that is sex, that is the very source of our existence, because every human being is a child of man and a woman. However, some semi-virtuous who want to pretend sexual chastity a horrified topic, and names that are represented on the basis of teaching things that pertain to sex. It seems that these novel virtuous, they had no father or mother who had formed the wind, not know them. For the pure everything is pure, and impure everything is impure, because they know that the man not only transforms sex and do not regenerate, but sex, because he is the son of sex, and sex lives by the door, enters the world, and she comes through that door, and came out of paradise by itself, will go to conquer the insulting sex. Sex is horrified. He insults God, because God made the world with sex, and sex is within. From sex only decrepit are horrified, because they exhausted their wives in the bacchanalia and fornication. From sex only hypocritical Pharisees are horrified, the whited sepulchres. Some people are horrified of sexual magic, and yet adulterate, right and left, beating the worst beasts. Those are the ones slander, is that each gives what he has. The sage gives wisdom and hypocritical defamation. Customs motivate most derogation for the economy of the people of a country. They are holding a real economic diabola that weighs heavily on consumers. To find out who favors the customs system, there is more to speak publicly about the abolition of them, and see who are those who are alarmed, and certainly there is no room for the theory. We advocate free trade, not based on money as now used, but products that children and adults can have equality, equity, and fraternity in Christian form, infinite and good. I believe that, when we reach parity, we have found that the international economic principle of the age of Aquarius. Surely it would not cause alarm system in the common people, because they favor them. Just be alarmed that today enjoy current systems, or less. But who created man not to fall? This political economic system of free trade without customs barriers, without much haywire controls, totally displace the existing today and keeps us in constant alarm when we speak of man to natural life, restored to the bosom of his mother nature. First thing that arises among readers are the defenders of urban life, because they know no other life. The first question that arises from them believe that we advocate the savagery of the caverns and the Stone Age. The answer you with occult axiom, Gnostic equals more experience at first cycle. Here to the first thought that arises in the reader and the listener is the figure of the vicious circle out of savagery to return to savagery. Those are the one slander, is that each gives what he has, the sage gives wisdom and hypocritical defamation. Customs motivate most derogation for the economy of the people of a country. They are holding a real economic diabler that weighs heavily on consumers. To find out who favors the customs system there is more to speak publicly about the abolition of them and see who are those who are alarmed, and certainly there is no room for the theory. We advocate free trade, not based on money as now used, but products that children and adults can have equality, equity, and fraternity in Christian form, infinite and good. I believe that, when we reach parity, we have found that the international economic principle of the age of Aquarius. Surely it would not cause alarm system in the common people, because they favor them. Just be alarmed that today enjoy current systems, or less. But who created man not to fall? This political economic system of free trade without customs barriers, without much haywire controls, totally displace the existing today and keeps us in constant alarm when we speak of man to natural life, restored to the bosom of his mother nature. First thing that arises among readers are the defenders of urban life, because they know no other life. The first question that arises from them believe that we advocate the savagery of the caverns and the Stone Age. The answer you with occult axiom, Gnostic equals more experience at first cycle. Here to the first thought that arises in the reader and the listener is the figure of the vicious circle out of savagery to return to savagery. And this, because most readers do not read us in the mood to learn, but to criticize. But we elude circle is performed in a spiral. I mean, it all comes back to the starting point. But the fruit of millennial experiences, which means back to the beginning, but with a superior culture, which was the basis for the spiral of life. Those were the secular foundations of our triumphant and victorious spirituality. The man is afraid of the so-called ravages of nature, and therefore prefers to live enclosed in urban life. It seems that no country can enjoy the luxury, comfort, and amenities provides urban life, and yet we see in New York, for example, many Wall Street traders during the day working in the midst of the stormy noise of the city, and amid the pimp business work in the evenings, and go running away from urban life for the night in their mansions. Villas are located on the fields and distances of the city, and there in the quiet of the countryside have their wives and children. This suggests to us clearly that the inhabitants of large cities are beginning to return to the bosom of Mother Nature. This kind of policies we collect means transplanting each comfort and amenities of the city to the bosom of Mother Nature, so we advocate mass increasingly fast and efficient transport roads and railways that cross the planet in all directions, small commercial, artistic, and cultural villages, from which they can wisely govern the destinies of the community, i.e. we want to turn the entire planet into a gigantic city full of comfort and amenities of all kinds. What is the purpose which we continue to live all stuck together like sardines in a box? Why do we need to build home to home, and room to room? Does the world is not large and spacious enough, so we can all have our comfortable residence, our garden and our garden? Why do we need to torment each other, and see breathing stale air of the big cities? Let us turn to the planet Earth in a giant city, whose dominions the sun never set. This heavenly city is the New Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, like a bride adorned for her husband. The Christ, the age of Aquarius, is already on the doorstep, and it is imperative that humanity awaken the lethargy in which it is the man has just gotten its primary ambition, adultery, having helped to multiply the evil, and spreading it through their concupiscent seed to all areas of the earth. Here are born every day the nonsense and the new being carries in its germ latent forces of evil against which all education crashes, every culture and every religion. The man, through all their beliefs and feelings, it has paid more attention to moral ethics to the extent that young people believe that they should only use citizen in the field of business, No sir, ethics comes from none other than the 10 commandments of God's law, the Decalogue, which are the laws of the code of nature, serving to all ages, all races, and therefore for all cultures and all civilizations. The ethics of nature is superior to the conventional morality of men. Referring to men are also always refers to women. That morality is the daughter of the customs of each race, and man uses when in the presence of others, while ethics puts man permanently in the presence of the divine through the fair eternity. Julio Medina